Welcome and thanks for having me, and really appreciate it. This is an important debate, obviously. I'm the publisher of, well, they're bringing my slides up here, Skeptic magazine. I brought enough, hopefully I shipped down a couple cases for everybody. We did an issue of Skeptic on gun control after the Sandy Hook massacre, just to kind of look at the science behind what we know about guns and gun control. And we're a science-based organization devoted to investigating any and all kinds of controversial claims. And should I send out my telepathic psychic powers to bring my slides up? Normally I could just give a talk off the top of my head, but it's kind of a data-heavy presentation here. And so just to kind of put it on the table here, I'm not anti-gun either. Neither Michael or I are a couple of right-wing gun nuts, nor are we far left, tree-hugging, wishy-washy, namby-pamby, bedwetting liberals afraid of guns. I grew up with BB guns and pellet guns and a 20-gauge shotgun and a 12-gauge shotgun. My stepfather was a hunter. So I spent years hunting birds, and we ate the birds. So I guess that makes it sort of okay. And then as an adult, I had let's see, wherever that went to. I hope I didn't turn it off. Oh, there we go. Okay, let's get that. Yeah, and I had a handgun, a Ruger, for 20 years as an adult, and basically, when my daughter got to be a teenager and had friends coming over, I thought it wasn't such a good idea, even with lock boxes and all that, so I got rid of it. I've shot guns. They're very visceral. If you've never shot a gun, it's no laughing matter. It's not just an intellectual exercise in talking about statistics. I mean, you can really seriously harm and kill people with guns. So from my perspective, I want to treat guns and gun laws as a problem to be solved. That is, the problem is there's more people die by guns than die by cars every year. 2016 is the last year we have 37,000 people died by gun. This is primarily homicide and suicide, more suicides than homicides. As a little sidebar, most people who kill themselves are themselves not really sure why they do it. And so oftentimes they don't really mean it. It's just sort of a cry for help, which pills can allow you to recover from, guns not so much. And if we compare these figures to the number of Americans who died by terrorism since 2004, the terrorism numbers are on the bottom there. They're just minuscule. And if you look at just since 9/11 or going all the way back, just think about the comparison of people that are pro-gun, that want to defend gun rights, to those same people, mostly conservatives, who are obsessed about growing the government to protect us from terrorism, right? These are the numbers that are in the statistical noise compared to gun deaths. Conservatives think of nothing of suspending civil rights and ramping up big government intrusion into our private lives in the name of homeland security, over numbers that are not even in the statistical noise compared to gun deaths. If over 30,000 people died annually from terrorism in the United States, the equivalent of over 10 9/11s every year, conservatives would declare a national emergency, quadruple the national defense budget, and suspend the Constitution, except for the Second Amendment, of course. Michael wrote in his 2003 paper, which I highly recommend you read. It's quite good, and it's quite fair, and there are also some good and fair critiques of it as well, because he gets into the weeds of the statistics on gun control. Rights function to guard individuals' autonomy, that is, their ability to pursue their plans for their own lives, rather than to protect their interests as assessed from a third-person point of view. I thought I would just throw in this as a sidebar. Therefore, if you're pro-gun, you must also be pro-choice on the abortion issue, because of the prima facie right of a woman's autonomy to pursue their plans for their own lives rather than to protect their interests in their bodies as assessed from a third-person point of view. In other words, blue-nosed, censorious conservatives. Okay, I'm just getting a little extra dig in there. We've got to be consistent about our moral philosophy if we're going to do this. So I'm a skeptic. Skeptics debunk myths. We're the original mythbusters. Let's take a look at some myths about guns. Myth number one, the Second Amendment to the Constitution protects us against tyranny. As the famous wording is, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Well, in 1776, that made a lot of sense because the military weapon of choice was the same as the private weapon of choice. Today, it's not quite the same. You cannot own your own private tank or a land surface-to-air missile or a drone that can strike with missiles. Not to mention nuclear weapons. You're already restricted by the government. Your rights to own these weapons to defend yourself are already restricted. So we're not talking about, just everybody should have everything that they want. If the special forces came to your home and you think you're going to stop them with your handgun or rifle, you're delusional. Do you know these guys? These are bad dudes, to quote our president. Special forces, Navy SEALs, if the feds come to your house, you're not going to protect yourself with your guns. You're not. Now, I'm not suggesting, again, I agree with Michael that we just confiscate every gun in America. It would be Waco and Ruby Ridge every weekend. Okay, that's not going to happen. But we already agree to restricting certain weapons. Myth number 2, the only thing that stops a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun, as famously said by Wayne LaPierre of the NRA. In other words, the NRA's solution to crime and violence is to arm everyone to the teeth and hope the good guys outgun the bad guys. In essence, it's saying America is a lawless society in which criminals run the show, so everyone is on their own. Arm them all and let God sort it out later, as the country western Texas song says. If the good guys are well-armed and professionally trained military and police who routinely practice at shooting ranges, then yes, this is one of the many factors in the decline of violence. If good guy means armed private citizens like these wingnuts with little or no gun training, this could not be more wrong. 2009 American Journal of Public Health study, epidemiologists at the University of Pennsylvania School of Medicine found that, on average, guns did not protect those who possessed them from being shot in an assault. In fact, they estimated that people with a gun were 4.5 times more likely to be shot in an assault than those not possessing a gun. There's a risk you take of having a gun in your house. There are several risks. The burglar may take your gun and shoot you with it, unless you're out there in the range practicing all the time and you know exactly where it's stored and how to get it out of your safe lockbox. You remember you use the fingerprint thing, or maybe it's the face recognition one, or maybe it's the code you forgot, and so forth. Arming everyone to the teeth as a solution to the problem of crime and violence is quite possibly the worst idea anyone has ever had. On time scales ranging from years to centuries, the decline of violence has been the result of disarming citizens and of civil society. Steven Pinker's book, The Battle Angels of Our Nature, my book, The Moral Arc, tracks this long-term trend over the centuries. A civil state with a monopoly on the legitimate use of force, this is the famous definition of what we mean by a government or a state, decreases incentives for exploitative attack, reduces the need for deterrence and vengeance, replaces self-help justice with criminal justice, and replaces a culture of honor with a culture of justice. In other words, we evolved a propensity to want justice, to want wrongs to be made right. This is why we created a criminal justice system. But if the criminal justice system is broken or it doesn't work, people then take the law into their own hands because they still have this strong urge to make wrongs right. If there's guns available, that's what makes it deadly. Here's the decline of homicide rate since the 14th century in Europe, from anywhere from 35 to 40 per 100,000 as criminologists study it, down to less than 1 per 100,000 in Europe. Today, it's about 5.5 per 100,000 in America today. We're about 5 times higher than Europe. I'll show you why in just a moment. By the way, busting another cowboy myth, most Western towns employed gun controls to reduce violence in order to bring business and civilization out west. Here's a famous sign in Wichita, Kansas in 1873, "Leave your revolvers at police headquarters and get a check." The gunfight at the OK Corral was over gun control and the enforcement of the law. Here's a Dodge City, Kansas, 1879 sign, "The carrying of firearms is strictly prohibited." Any persons or persons found carrying concealed weapons in the city of Dodge or violating the laws of the state shall be dealt with according to the law. The result of these Wild West gun control laws, in a 10-year period, total murders were 15 or 1.5 homicides per year, a dramatic decline from the rate before. In other words, more gun control, less crime. Michael made reference to John Lott's famous book, More Guns, Less Crime. I'm saying more gun control, less crime. Number 3, more guns equals less crime. John Lott's book, the U.S. crime rates are comparable to other Western countries who have few guns. In other words, compare our non-gun related crimes. Car theft, burglary, robbery, sexual assault, aggravated assault, and adolescent fighting rates are similar to those of other high-income countries. But our homicide rates are off the charts higher. Why? Guns. Here's a guns per 100 people in different countries, and as you can see, we're almost 1 per person. Some people have no guns, like me, I have no guns, but other people have lots of guns. That makes it close to 1 per person. Here's the gun murder rates in the developed world, and there we are on the far right. Again, these numbers are just off the charts higher. This particular chart here is important. First, look at the blue. This is average non-gun homicides per 100,000 people. The rate in America is comparable to other European and Western industrialized nations. It's the green, the average gun homicides, that serves as a kind of experimental control to see what variable it is that's causing the carnage. It's the guns. Here's gun deaths by gun ownership of another study, guns per 100 people and the number of homicides per 100,000 people. We're number 1, America, we rule. Yeah, sure. Here's another study, homicide, suicide, and unintentional gun deaths among 5 to 14-year-olds. This is the United States versus 25 other high-income countries. So they're going to give us a mortality rate ratio. These are non-gun homicides. So us compared to the average of 25 other Western industrialized nations, 1.7 to 1. Gun homicides, 13.2 to 1. Non-gun suicides, 1.3 to 1. Gun suicides, 7.8 to 1. And unintentional gun deaths, 10.3 to 1. In other words, it's the guns. That's the problem. Here's gun ownership versus gun deaths by state. Again, you see a nice linear relationship there between the number of guns and the number of people that die by gun. Number 4, when guns are outlawed, only outlaws will have guns. Gun control does not mean we're going to ban or outlaw all guns. Gun control does not mean you're anti-gun or you're an opponent of gun. Handguns are protected by the Second Amendment, the famous 2008 Supreme Court decision in Heller. There's been 2 actually in the 2000s. That would make it virtually impossible for that to be reversed now. So we have to face that fact. But this is not a slippery slope argument. For example, the licensing and regulation of cars does not mean only outlaws will drive cars. Police and courts need gun regulation to bar high-risk people from guns. Or else, what's the point of having a civil society based in the rule of law? By the way, conservatives are always saying, we're for the rule of law. Yeah, okay. Why don't you apply it to all areas? 1934 National Firearms Act regulating the manufacture and sale of machine guns. Did this result in only outlaws having machine guns? No. Where are today's machine gun Kellys? By the way, this was backed by the NRA. This is when the NRA was a gun safety organization rather than a political lobbyist organization. Number 5, criminals avoid armed citizens. Criminals routinely engage armed citizens, drug dealers, armed gang members. Gun deterrence doesn't work. Street gang members are 8.8 times more likely to own handguns than other youths and 19 times more likely to be homicide victims. Drug dealers are 3.7 times more likely to own a handgun and 6 times more likely to be homicide victims. It's the guns. Myth number 6, America's culture of violence. That must be it. If you saw Michael Moore's film, Bowling for Columbine, he kind of went through all these arguments. This was one of them that he leaned heavily on, which I think is busted by the fact that other Western countries watch just as many violent videos, films, and TV shows, and yet they don't have the rates even remotely close to our gun homicide rates. I wonder why. Let's put our thinking caps on. Oh yeah, they don't have guns. Number 7, guns in the home stop crime. The Journal of Trauma and Acute Care Surgery on Injuries and Deaths Due to Firearms in the Home, 1998. Every time a gun in the home was used in a self-defense or legally justifiable shooting, there were 4 unintentional shootings, 7 criminal assaults or homicides, and 11 attempted or completed suicides. In other words, a gun is 22 times more likely to be used by a good guy against another good guy than it is by a good guy against a bad guy. Notice Adam Lanza, the Sandy Hook shooter. First shot his mom. His mother was shot by her own gun by her own family member. That's not that uncommon. That's not a good guy shooting a bad guy. So we can run through all the thought experiments you want. The victim comes in, this person does that, and isn't it his right to defend himself? Yeah. Go ahead, have a gun in your house. Go for it. But you're 11 times more likely to be shot with your own gun. Just keep that in mind before you buy a gun. The same day as the Sandy Hook shooting, a Chinese man stabbed with a knife 22 children and 1 adult outside a primary school in Henan Province, China. Number of fatalities, 0. April 8, 2013, Lone Star College knife attack injuring 14 people by 20-year-old student Dylan Quick. Number of fatalities, 0. Yes, you can kill somebody with a knife, but it takes a lot more effort than it does with a gun. Number 8, the high-capacity ammunition feeding device won't work. It prohibits magazines that hold more than 10 bullets. The maximum is now 100. Adam Lanza purposely took only the high-capacity magazines with him to the elementary school. Why? Because he wanted to kill as many kids as possible in as short a time as possible. 154 rounds in under 10 minutes, resulting in 26 dead. You don't need a cartridge that holds 100 bullets if you're a hunter. You can just reload. The animals may not wait around for you, but that's part of the sport, right, if you're that into that. Tucson shooting of Gabby Giffords, Jared Loeffner used a 33-round clip in a 9mm Glock 19 semi-automatic pistol that he dropped when reloading and was stopped by 74-year-old Bill Badger, who was almost shot by a bystander, by the way. You know, you have like 1.5 seconds to decide what to do, and oftentimes people react inappropriately and people get shot. Number 9, background checks and mental health monitoring won't work. Busted, 60% of crime guns originate with only 1% of licensed gun dealers. 85% of gun dealers sell no guns traced to a crime. The ATF says the most important single source of firearms for the illegal market is still illegal traffickers who are acquiring firearms from retail outlets. So, tighten up the laws. Enforce the laws if we live in a society of laws. Intimate partner homicides account for half of all women killed. In 2010, 1,082 women and 267 men were killed by their intimate partners. 54% were by guns. Over the past 25 years, guns were involved in more intimate partner homicides than all other causes combined. When a woman is murdered, it is most likely by her intimate partner with a gun, not a stranger, as in the famous case of Oscar Pistorius, who killed his girlfriend. As an alternative to arming women against violent men, legislation can help. Data shows that in states that prohibit gun ownership by men who have received a domestic violence restraining order, gun-caused homicides of intimate female partners were reduced by 25%. Again, now, I'm not a woman. I don't know what it's like to be confronted by somebody who has twice your physical power. If you want a gun, have a gun. But just understand that there are huge risks with that, and you may get shot by your own gun. The more that you have those kinds of weapons around, the higher the risks go when tempers flare and so forth. He may know where your gun is just as well as you do. Mental illness and mass murders, more than half were committed by individuals with mental health problems who had exhibited signs noticed by family, friends, or colleagues indicative that something was wrong and that violence of some kind was possible. James Holmes amassed an arsenal of 6,295 rounds of ammunition, 2 handguns, a shotgun, an assault rifle, ballistic gear, laser sights and holsters, and tear gun canisters, all delivered to his doorstep by UPS. Thanks. No one noticed. Okay. Or Sung Cho killed 32 and wounded 17 at Virginia Tech. The Brady Act would have stopped him from buying his guns. In 2005, a Virginia judge found him to be mentally ill and a danger to himself, but the record disqualifying Cho from buying guns was not in the database checked by Virginia authorities. Okay, so again, the laws are already there. We should just employ them more actively. In conclusion, what should we do? Okay, again, our goal here is just what can we do to reduce the carnage? Again, if it was 37,000 people dead every year from terrorism, there would be a national panic. This is all anybody would talk about all day, every day on every talk show. Okay, so what we want to know is how can we, reduce the carnage from guns? 1, ban military-style assault weapons. 2, ban high-capacity magazines above 10. 3, universal background check system. 4, close the gun show loophole. 5, penalties for illegal gun trafficking. 6, ban high-risk individuals from guns convicted of violent crime, drugs, stalking, restraining orders. Ban sales to dangerously mentally ill people. And research funding on gun violence. It's not a trivial piece of information that the NRA does not want research organizations collecting data like this. Why? What's wrong with having knowledge? Because then people may not buy as many guns. And the NRA is a lobbyist group for the gun manufacturing industry. So, in conclusion, I say we can do something. We can't do everything, but as Dr. King said, even though we can't do everything, we can do something to reduce the carnage of gun violence and further bend the arc of the moral universe to justice, peace, and freedom. Thank you.